Good, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Luise Müller-Hofstede. I'm from Circulor. And today I want to talk with you about the battery passport, but not the if and the how and the when, but I would like to talk with you about the why. So why are we talking about the battery passport? And it's more around the concept of the battery passport as opposed to the regulation, the EU battery regulation, which is coming. We all know that, even though it's currently in draft. We know the European Commission is fast-tracking it. But today I'm basically here to talk about sustainability. And everybody expects you to be sustainable. So your customers, your leaders, the government, but you have to verify that. And that is a very important thing to say, because we cannot talk about sustainability without verification anymore. The time is over where we could make all the claims, and we heard it a lot, who is looking into sustainability and what they're doing. And that is also the key of the battery passport, to say we have to verify sustainable claims from companies in order to make the battery passport happen. So, as you can see here, Circulor empowers sustainable value chains, and all companies are talking about it, what they want to do and what they're going to do, what they have done in the past, but then there are different levels of that. So there's the base and the mid layer. It's using new materials, changing processes and switching to renewable energies. And then there's the Champions League. And the Champions League is prolonging the life cycle. And only when you prolong the life cycle, two things are happening. So the first thing is you retain value that you already have, and you create additional value to an already existing product by adding a service. And this is then when it comes interesting, sustainability not only for the sake of the planet, but also in terms of business growth. And we have sophisticated a couple of examples with our customers. And I have to give you a quick introduction to who is Circulor, because I'm quite sure not everybody knows about what we're doing. So we are a software business headquartered in London with entities in Berlin, that is me, which stands for the EU, as well as Singapore for the Asian market and North America. And you can see here some exemplary customers which are under public domain. You can see we have a very strong focus on the automotive space. So that is Volvo and Daimler and Jaguar Land Rover and Polestar on the OEM side. And quite soon we can announce another German OEM. And then there's the cell-producing side. So we have British Volt, for example. And but then what is also important is that sustainability is not only driven by the OEM side, but now I would say in the last year we see that a lot of raw material producers, such as the Finnish Minerals Group, which is also part of our customers, they want to prove their sustainability claims. They want to add this additional layer of value to say we keep on selling raw materials. But what we also want to sell together with the raw materials is the proof that they have been sustainably sourced, that they have been CO2 sourced with a CO2 low intensity, with a good water footprint. So we basically have clients from the very upstream part until the very downstream part, and then, of course, also then looking into recycling when downstream becomes upstream again. On the investor side, I'm not going through everything, but I would like to point out the Westley Group. We just closed our Series A and raised 20 million euros. The Westley Group belongs to Steve Westley. Steve Westley was one of the first Tesla investors. And I screenshotted one tweet, which I would like to read to you. He said, "I invested in Tesla when it still felt like sci-fi, but new electric vehicles are key to fighting global warming. I invested in Circulor for the same reason. Companies must ensure supply chains are environmentally safe and sound." So these are like a list of resources we are currently tracking. This is our core business. We track resources from the mine to the manufacturer and then back into recycling. The rare earth minerals, the classical ones that go into EVs, cobalt, mica, graphite, lithium, copper, nickel, manganese, and 3TGs. But then also plastic, leather, and palm oil. And I know that you're not so interested in potentially leather and palm oil, some of you into plastic. But what they all have in common is that they change physical and chemical state throughout the value chain. And that is something completely new because there's a lot of track and trace, bananas from the farm to the breakfast table, but never change their state. So you can sticker them, you can follow them with smart tags and then prove where they're coming from. It becomes very difficult when we do the same for raw materials because you extract them as an ore out of the earth, then they go into the chemical midstream part, into Asia, completely losing track of its journey, and then, finally into the car. And this is what we do is our USP. We are currently the most mature solution on the market. I would even say a global leader in that space because we are able to track that. And how do we do that? Don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with too much tech, but we basically create a digital twin at source. So the lump of ore goes into a bag, we close the bag, security tag, and then digital twin is created for that batch. And then we understand each production step within the value chain. So what is happening at the smelters, at the refiners, at the NCM precursor producers, the cathode producers, the cell producers, until the lump of ore found its way to the car. And we understand, with understanding the production steps, we understand the volume, for example. So everywhere where 1 ton of cobalt ore goes in, 800 kilogram of cobalt needs to go out. And by understanding that, we can then reliably follow the actual flow of material. And by establishing that traceability and that visibility into the supply chain, we can then follow or ask the traceability line to ask other information. So for example, how does the CO2 intensity look like at each production step, on the batch level, on tier by tier? So in the end, the OEM receives a cell or a pack or module, knowing exactly the CO2 intensity of it, knowing exactly the water print of it, or any other ESG credential you're looking for. And then, of course, additionally, responsibly, if it's been responsibly sourced or not. This is, I think this picture shows best the circularity and why we need technology in order to drive that circularity. Because the backbone of the battery passport and of every circular solution is information. And information comes from data. So we collect data, data becomes information, information becomes knowledge, and only with knowledge we can then enable circularity. Because what we're currently lacking is knowledge. And we can only start bringing resources back into the circle if we have the knowledge, if we know, should the battery be reused? Should the battery have a second life? Should it be recycled? So recycling is not a sustainable option. It's only the third option after you thought about it, if it's maybe better to reuse it or put it into a stationary application, for example. So the backbone of the battery passport is circularity, and sounds easy. It's not easy at all because, as you know, there are all the industries plugging into that, and now it requires for the first time that companies need to talk to each other. I mean, talking would be good, but a good thing is we have technology in order to let data talk to each other in a secure way. So that is not the problem anymore. And I think that is also one of the main reasons why we are talking so much about sustainability these days. It's and especially in the last 1 year or 2 years. two reasons. The very, very obvious one, climate change is real, planet needs us to act now. And then the second one is a very simple one. We have the technology that actually enables us to think about those solutions, to think about the circular economy and to think about something like a massive project like the battery passport. So it's not meant to read the slide, it's only meant to show you how granular we are at each step and how granular information and therefore data needs to be. Here's only parts of the value chain until the NCM precursor, but then if I would have shown you the whole value chain, it would have been even more unreadable. So we connect all the participants in the supply chain, understanding where are the resources coming from, where are the raw materials coming from, where is recycled content coming in. And this is very important because at the moment, the EU battery regulation will require you to prove a certain amount of, or its percentage, a quota of recycling, and at the moment that is impossible. How can you prove that in fact 30% of your used cobalt is recycled? Because if it's primary and secondary, it's the same. It has the same performance, the same quality, it smells the same. It's not green in a literal way. So you wouldn't be able to detect if it's primary, secondary. And that is also something we need to start thinking now, because now we think, the final solution is to go into circular economy, but there will be also a massive dark side of circular economy. And I think in the center of that is, for example, double counting. How do you want to make sure that how do you want to verificate sustainability claims? How do you want to make sure that, in fact, a resource is recycled and comes at a more sustainable, and comes with a more sustainable value added to it? So this is then how our platform looks like. Basically, it's like a control room. Every participant of the supply chain sitting in this control room sees where are currently my resources, see all the onboarded supply chains, see the CO2 intensity on a batch level, on a tier level. I'm always saying we are not the ethical supply chain police. I'm not an NGO. I'm not pointing fingers who's good, who's bad, because I think it's very difficult to rank. Because some might be good in CO2 intensity, others might be very responsible around sourcing. So we only show how does your material flow through the supply chains, and most importantly, where material enters your supply chain that you don't know the source from. And this then could be potentially child labor. Just to state the very obvious, if you have traceability in your supply chains and therefore supply chain transparency, you have reputational protection, and that is much more on the OEM side than I think the tier 1s, tier 2s, and 3s, and so on. Proof of compliance, of course, you have a complete history of each cell which arrives at the OEMs, of collected certificates, collected audits, but they only show small portions in time. Only traceability gives you end-to-end visibility of your supply chains, of your activities in the supply chains on an ongoing basis. Then there's dynamic carbon tracking, which I already mentioned, and of course minimizing and eliminating costs when it comes to audits and inspections. And this is me. Thank you so much for listening to me. Here's my email address in case we haven't spoken already. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. There's nobody else with that weird last name. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Luise Müller-Hofstede. And I think that's really, really important what you just talked about, that we have to really look for the CO2 footprint and all these different numbers, but it's what you said, really difficult to say which number is the most important one. There are so many economic numbers, like GVP and so on I don't find the English word.
No, it is currently a mess, and I think it's only honest to say it out loud that currently calculating CO2 emissions is like a little strategy game. You calculate it in the way so you look good in the end. Fine, but still that shouldn't stop us from starting, because we cannot wait until the entire industry, the entire world, because supply chains are global and complex, finally standardized one method we all agree to. That won't happen, so we have to start
exactly one method and data which is reliable,
yes,
on which you can use. Okay, is there a question from the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Luise. Great presentation on the circular economy. Fantastic. The question which I have is: are you using already blockchain in the entire process? And then, if you have the value chain or the supply chain, and they providing the data, is then the data available to everybody who is on the platform? How you are dealing with this? Thank you.
Yeah. Super good questions. We always say we don't say the B word, but yes, we have B in our technology. I'm trying to avoid blockchain because I'm trying to avoid. No. Actually, we are not. It's only a smart part of our solution. But I would like to avoid the why do you use blockchain? It doesn't matter, we want to store certain data, not all data, in a way that it's tamper-proof. So then we come to reputational protection. So if in 3 years, I don't know, the headline comes, there's child labor in your supply chains, you want to make sure that the data and the information you stored 5 years ago from the mine you sourced your products from is in fact that and hasn't been tampered with afterwards. And then regarding the data point of the platform, no, of course not. Always think transparency doesn't mean you have to get naked in front of everyone and everybody will see what you do. Transparency means access-based visibility. Yeah, the technology, and again, without boring you, technology provides us now with a methodology to say, I don't need to know the exact number. I only need to know that the number is there and that it's stored, and the percentage of that number goes into my supply chain, and this is relevant for me. So of course, data security is super important for us, and it's all access-based. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Mrs. Müller-Hofstede.